nice and soft. You can actually make a lot from it. And silver, you can make, silver is more so used for tableware, such as cutlery, which we use on a daily basis, vases and so on like that.
Is it easy to mould these metals?
It's very easy to mould, particularly gold in the higher carats is very malleable, it's very soft, easy to mould.
And is there any other metals that you use?
We use copper and brass very frequently, particularly students, because it's very affordable to use. And also the methods that we use in copper and brass can be transferred over to gold and silver at a later date.
And how do you treat these metals before you create your final product?
Most metals are very hard when you get them, so they need to be softened up, and that is a heat process where we actually use torches to heat the metal up to a certain temperature, which breaks up the crystal structure, and this makes them nice and soft and malleable again. And then we actually just use all sorts of processes, sawing, cutting, and so on to actually shape it, to cut the metal. And then we join the metals using solders or cold joins such as rivets and so on.
What if you want to create pretty patterns in the metals? How do you do that?
There's all sorts of processes that are involved. We use a rolling mill where we can actually print things such as a leaf into metal, which surprised a lot of people. You can also use hammers, punches and so on, texturing things using a dentist tool and so on. So there's all sorts of processes.
And what are your main tools that you use?
The most important tool for any jeweller would be their jeweller's saw. This saw is used on a daily basis. You know, most jewellers will never live without it. Also, we use things like files. We also use our pliers every day. So there's a myriad of tools that we use.
Well, thanks a lot for your help today, Matt. And of course, with the talents of Matt and many other gold and silver smiths like him, we can enjoy the fine jewellery that we wear today.
I love jewellery, but I have to say silver is definitely my fave. Alrighty, question time. Here's something to have a think about. What is the smallest living creature? Bit of a puzzle of that. We'll go to a break. I'll be back with the answer. See you in a sec. Is it an insect, a plant, a bacteria? No, it's a nanobe. This absolutely microscopic creature was discovered growing on rocks dug up from more than 3 kilometres below the ocean floor near Australia. They measure between 20 and 150 nanometres in length, and a nanometre is 1/1000th of a metre. So that makes this little nano pretty small. Well, David's revved up and ready to go on his side of the studio, so let's go see what he's up to.
This is so unfair. Tara has played a little gag on me. Now, I don't know why she'd want to play a gag on me. I never play gags on her. Now, what she's done is she's mixed up a whole lot of hard-boiled eggs in with some raw eggs, and I've got no idea which is which, and I'm really rather hungry at the moment. I was looking forward to having one of those hard-boiled eggs. Fortunately, I do know a scientific way of working out the difference between a hard-boiled egg and a raw egg. It's all got to do with the way you spin it. Let's give it a go. Let's pick 2 eggs from here. Hopefully one of them will be raw and one of them will be hard-boiled. I'll take these 2 and see what happens. I'll spin this one first and watch what happens to it as I do that. We spin it and it just keeps on going and going and going and going and going, and eventually it will actually slow down. Okay, I have a suspicion as to what that egg actually is. Let's give the other egg a spin though, do exactly the same thing. So let's spin it round and start spinning, and then it slows down very, very quickly. Now I have a feeling that this is the raw egg and that this is the hard-boiled egg. The hard-boiled egg was the one that kept spinning for longer, and the raw egg was the one that slowed down very, very quickly. Now, the reason this happens, let's put it back on the table here and spin the raw one again. As we spin that, it's also got fluid inside of it, okay? So it's got the hard outer case, it's also got fluid on the inside. Now, when I spin it, it takes a little while for the fluid to actually start spinning. What happens is the fluid stays still for longer than the outside of the egg. Now, this rubs against the inside of the egg, and it will slow it down, so it won't spin as fast because of that fluid inside of there. The other egg, however, doesn't have a fluid inside of there. It's just a solid egg. So it will actually spin for quite a lot longer, as we saw just a moment ago. Now, there's one other way to test this out as well. If I start my, my raw egg spinning, like so, then stop it, and then let it go, it will keep spinning for a short time. Now, did you see that? I'll try that once more. Let's give it a good spin, like so, stop it, and it just keeps spinning. Now, this is because that fluid on the inside starts to spin and it actually catches up, and then when I stop it, the fluid keeps spinning. And as it keeps spinning, it will then take the rest of the egg along with it, and then it will stop. Now, we know that this one, of course, does not have the fluid inside of there, so if I spin it, then stop it, it will just stop like it did just there. Now we need to prove that this is definitely the raw egg, and the only way to do that is to crack it open, of course. So over to here, to the bowl, and if we crack this, then, of course, we are right. That was our raw egg. Excellent. Put that in there. We maybe make some scrambled eggs with that later, and I'll have a hard-boiled egg in just a second. I can put that back down the corner and know that is definitely the hard-boiled egg, and I can work out the other ones in just a moment. Now, have you ever tried to balance a basketball on your finger? Since we're talking about spin, I thought I'd bring in my basketball and talk about spin with the basketball as well. When we put this up on our finger, it's actually quite difficult just to balance like so. Very, very difficult indeed. But if we start it spinning, it actually becomes a lot easier. I'm sure you've tried this at home. Let's give it a go. Spin and whoops. Let's give this a go. Now, of course, there we go. It's a little bit easier to balance up there when it's actually spinning. Now, this is because the ball, I was about to call it a balloon, I've got no idea why, when this is spinning, actually has something called angular momentum. It wants to spin around its axis. Now, as it does that, it wants to keep spinning around its axis, and that prevents it from actually falling off my finger. Let's give it one more go, see if I can get it to work again. Here we go, and that was a little bit better. Maybe I need to practice that one, I think. Let's put that aside. There's lots of other things, of course, which do spin as well. One of them is your bike wheel on your bike. And this one will spin that way, and it will spin around this central axis here. And as it spins around that central axis, it won't fall over. It keeps wanting to spin just in that direction around that axis there. Now, there's another thing over here which spins quite nicely. I've got it fallen in the sink here, and that is a football. Now, this one spins in a very peculiar way when I put it down on the table and give it a bit of a flick. Watch what happens. Here we go. Let's give it a spin. And it spins around for a while, then falls off the table. Let's try that again. Bit faster, I think. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, and like so. Well, third time's the charm. Let's just push things back here. 3, 2, 1, and nope. Fourth time. That's the one we're after. Did you see the way it starts to spin up onto its end? Very, very peculiar indeed. Let's try once more, and up it goes, and off the table and way over there. That doesn't matter. So what's happening is this thing, as it starts to spin, it wants to spin around its central axis, and it wants to bring its mass into the center because it's easier to spin that way. So it's lazy, if you want to think about it in those terms. So it will spin a lot faster when it's actually up on its end, and it will be easier to spin that way as well. Meanwhile, there's lots of things that you better find around the house, around school, around all sorts of different places that will spin as well. See how many of them you can find, and have a bit of an investigation and see how they do spin as well.
I didn't do it. It wasn't me. Oh, well, all right, maybe it was. But it put you in a bit of a spin though, didn't it, David? Now, have you ever wondered, like Trina Grant of Ovingham, South Australia, what is the world's oldest animal? Well, Joseph has always been interested in animal longevity, and he was first to put up his hand to search out the answer.
I'd like to introduce you to Harriet. Harriet is a giant Galapagos land tortoise, and she's one of the most amazing animals in the world. But it's not her size or even this beautiful shell that's the most amazing thing about her. But before we get to that, let's find out a little bit more about where she comes from.
The Galapagos Islands are situated in the Pacific Ocean, about 900 kilometres off the southwest coast of Ecuador. These islands are renowned for their unique flora and fauna that is found nowhere else on Earth.
What makes Harriet such an amazing animal is the fact that she's 170 years old, which makes her the oldest living animal in the world in captivity. Now, if Harriet could speak, she'd have some very interesting tales to tell, including how she travelled with the famous botanist Charles Darwin from the Galapagos Islands to England in 1835. She was then brought to Australia in about 1840, where she survived floods and changed homes twice over 2 centuries.
Harriet weighs about 190 kilograms. She was named after a man called Harry Oakman, who was a curator at the Brisbane Botanical Gardens. However, when they realised that she was a female, Harry became Harriet. And it's also interesting to note that despite her age, it is believed that Harriet is still able to breed.
Well, Jan, they say that the key to a long life is to have a healthy appetite. What sort of food does Harriet eat?
Harriet eats a lot of vegetables. She's a herbivore. In her own environment, she'd eat a lot of grasses and cacti. Here in captivity, she eats basically a lot of green vegetables, of course other vegetables as well. Her favourites are lucerne and mulberry leaves and hibiscus flowers.
She's got quite an amazing mobile home here. Can she feel us patting her on the back here?
Yes, she certainly can. She can feel through that shell. and she just loves people patting her, basically. But yeah, she can definitely feel through that.
Are these markings distinctive for a Galapagos tortoise?
Yes, they are. They are.
And what about the feet? They're quite large feet, but I guess she needs that to support the weight.
Yes, yeah. A lot of children remark they look like elephants' feet, but Harriet here is 180 kilos. The males can certainly get heavier. They don't swim, so they certainly don't need any webbing between their toes, but yeah, they certainly need those heavy feet to get around with.
They don't know in exactly what month Harriet was born. However, her birthday is celebrated annually in November, as this is a time when the tortoises lay their eggs on the Galapagos Islands.
If you think Harriet's face looks quite familiar, it might have something to do with the fact that Steven Spielberg got the idea for the movie character E.T. from a giant tortoise, just like Harriet. But unlike E.T., Harriet is quite happy here on Earth. And even though she's 170, she could be with us for at least another 50 years. What a remarkable lady.
The sights Harriet must have seen and the lettuce she must have munched in 170 years. Whew. Did you know that just by recycling one aluminium can, you can conserve enough energy to run a TV for 3 hours? Recycling one aluminium can consumes only 5% of the energy it takes to make a brand new can. What's more, aluminium cans can be recycled again and again, so it pays to recycle these useful drink containers. Planet Venus rotates in the opposite direction of the Earth. That means if you were on Venus, the sun would come up in the west and set in the east. Now, the atmospheric pressure on Venus is equal to 90 Earth atmospheres, and its temperature runs around the 460 degrees Celsius mark. That's it, Venus is definitely off my holiday destination list. David's back with us now. Over to you, David.
From little things, big things can grow. So I'm putting little pushes into my pendulum at the moment, and I'm actually ending up with a very, very big motion. We started off with this in the center of the table, not swinging very much at all. We put little pushes in at the right time, and I can get my pendulum to swing very, very big arcs. Now, what I'm doing at the moment is something called resonance. I'm hitting this at its natural frequency. And as I do that, all it takes is a little push to keep this growing. Now, every pendulum swings at a natural frequency. It's the natural frequency of those swings. And if we do put the pushes in at the right time, then we do get that resonance and we can increase that arc. If we put the push in at the wrong time, then what will actually happen, of course, is we'll interfere and our pendulum will stop swinging. We can also find out what the natural frequency of our pendulum is very, very easily. All we have to do is time a certain number of swings over a period of time. So if we give this a push again, like so, and get it going, and we need to then time a number of swings over, say, 10 seconds. So here we go. Let's start it there. That's coming back to one swing. And if we come back to a second swing over 10 seconds, almost finished here, back to the middle, and that is about 2 3/4 swings. So let's work a few things out here. First of all, the period. So we've got 10 divided by 2.75, and that's going to be our period, or 3.63 seconds for one swing of our pendulum. Now we can inverse that. 1 divided by 3.63, and that is going to give us our frequency. So 1 divided by 3.63 equals 0.275, and that is 0.275 of a swing per second. So that's how we get that particular natural frequency worked out there. Now, different objects have a different natural frequency. I've got a reverse situation here. We've actually got the weight at the top here instead of the weight being down the bottom. Some smiley faces there as well. Now, each of these different rods is going to have a different natural frequency. Now, I have to put a frequency of pushes down the bottom here into this system, and as I do that, these will actually vibrate at different rates. So, let's give it a go. If I start pushing down the bottom here, let's see which one. Well, the large one is going to start swinging first. It actually has the lowest natural frequency. I'm going to hit myself in the head here, I think. Let's stop that. If I now go a little bit faster, we've got that one in the middle actually moving now. Again, I'm going to hit myself. But the one next to it, which is the same length, is not vibrating yet. We'll work out why that is in just a second. If I go faster again, put in a higher frequency, then you'll notice the one down the bottom here is now vibrating the fastest. If I go even faster, then we go back to that other one in the center, which is very, very curious. Why is it so? Let's have a little bit of a think about it. Well, the longest one here is the one with the lowest natural frequency. The shortest is with the highest natural frequency. So length here has a factor. This one here is actually a thicker dowel than the one sitting next to it. It's much, much thicker. So this is stiffer, and it actually has a higher natural frequency. Now, most objects will have a natural frequency at which they will actually vibrate. I think I'll just get rid of my smiley friends here for a second. If you're travelling along in a car, you might notice that different parts of the car actually vibrate at different speeds. Now, of course, this is just that each of those different parts of the car has a different natural frequency. You can also put different objects next to a stereo speaker. And what will happen is those objects may actually vibrate at different notes that the speaker actually plays, which is pretty curious stuff. Now, this can be very, very destructive as well. In fact, in 1940, the Tacoma's narrow bridge actually collapsed. What happened was a wind hit it at a certain frequency, which was the natural frequency of the bridge, and the bridge literally shook itself to pieces. Now, soldiers, as they march across bridges, actually break step. They don't march at the same time. If they did, they could actually set up a natural frequency of the bridge, get it to resonate, and the whole thing would collapse. So science can be pretty powerful stuff. It's very important that we understand how things happen so that we can prevent such disasters from occurring.
Cooking and chemistry. Well, how does it work? What's it all about? Today, we're going to make mayonnaise, and it's all about chemistry. It's very easy to do. Simple, in fact. All you need is some oil, some vinegar, some eggs, mustard powder and salt to taste, and of course some bowls and some whisks and utensils like that to make it all. First of all, we've got to grab our egg and separate the egg yolk and the egg white. Now, I've done that before, just doing the old tip trick, and I've got my egg yolk in this bowl here. We've got to get a whisk, or if you've got an electric one, that'll probably be better, but I've just used a fork and I'm just whisking it up, making it nice and light and fluffy and putting lots of air into it there. Okay, once you've got this all whisked and happening, you need to add in half a teaspoon of mustard. We've just got some powdered mustard here, and a little bit of salt to taste. Just like so. Give that a good stir. Just mixing it all in. Like that. So it's nice. It's starting to look a little bit more like mayonnaise. What we need to add now is some oil, and you need to add half a cup of oil. So I've got my oil here, or a cup of oil, depending on how thick you want your mayonnaise. So we'll start with half a cup, I think. And just gradually add a bit by bit. So we'll pour a little bit in there like that. And give it a stir. You can see that mixing in nicely. Starting to look a bit more like mayonnaise. Now you'll notice that the oil is making it nice and thick. Now if we add a bit more oil, like that. Look, it's quite a bit of oil actually. Well, okay, now we've got it nice and happening. We need to add some vinegar that gives mayonnaise that nice bitter taste. Now, normally when you add vinegar, when you put oil and vinegar together, they don't mix. Now this is the chemistry part of it all. So we'll just add a little dash of vinegar in there. The reason why they mix in the mayonnaise is because this is an emulsion, not a solution. It means the solid particles are suspended in this liquid, they're not dissolved. So that's the chemistry behind our mayonnaise. Oh, we can look at that, it's starting to look a little bit more mayonnaise. Add a bit more oil. There we go. I'm sure it tastes fantastic. I'll have to give that a bit of a taste later on. So now you know your chemistry and your cooking, and you guys can make mayonnaise at home. And of course, it's all about science. Alrighty, I can feel